Hello Exiles, this is BEG with another POE 1 video. Today's video I'm going to go over my Frostblade Surfcaster for the Legacy of Phrecia event going on in Path of Exile 1. Here I set up a full kind of progression guide, including a couple of options for early game leveling, and then I also set up a nice little progression game plan. It's not exactly a step-by-step guide like previous builds I've done have been, especially for Frostblades, but it should be enough to get you through. So I'm going to go over all of that and talk about how you want to navigate this. The reason it took me a while is because I didn't realize that instead of, for POB, actually entering the Ascendancies, the new Ascendancies, as things you can select, they itemized them. So if you want to go into POB and look at things, you can simply, for instance, type in Surfcaster here, and it'll be as a prismatic jewel. So keep in mind that there's a couple of extra points at the different level breaks that I have here, especially after the first Ascendancy, because I have to have at least one extra point for a jewel. And of course, since you won't have this as a jewel, you'll have it as an actual Ascendancy, you'll be able to go ahead and replace that with a good jewel in the actual game. But if, for instance, you look at right after my first Ascension, I just grabbed this 2-point jewel over here, but it would cost 2 points. You'll also have to manually adjust the levels. So let's say, this is a level 40 tree roughly, give or take. So keep that in mind. And then you'll have a couple of extra points to play with. Or in this case, not really, but okay, so let's get to it then. Starting off with the early game. Important thing here, I have two different trees. I have a low level with two-handed sword, and then a low level with blade trap. So there's a couple of different ways you can level early on, and in the notes, I also have optional: start duelist, do the Tidal Island quest to get Ancestral Call and an extra Quicksilver. If you're going to be doing Frostblades all the way through, I highly recommend doing that. It's a little less necessary if you're going to be going Blade Trap, but it can still be helpful for the first, most of Act 1 until right before you get to Merveil, which is when you are going to get Blade Trap. Blade Trap is really reliable as a boss killer, and it's okay for clearing too. You just keep running and dropping Blade Traps, and the monsters will follow you, and you'll kill them that way. And you can burst down bosses really quick. Two-handed swords just do a ton more damage. You can get your first really decent one right before Brutus. I think it's a level 8 or 9. You can get Longsword, and having that is going to kill Brutus much more quickly than a Claw. You can still go Claws and kind of go all the way through, but just going a Claw and trying to kill Brutus and Merveil with Frostblades is a little slow. You can definitely do it, but it is going to be much slower than either using a two-handed sword or blade trap. So if you want to speed up your Act 1, you can do that. If you do happen to get a really good claw with a lot of damage, you can maybe go through Act 1 still if you get lucky with a claw, and that won't be necessary. But here's the tree for the two-handed sword. Important things here are before Act 2, when you get your heralds, because you're also going to want to run Clarity and Precision because you're going to have mana troubles, you are going to want to pick up Charisma early on. I do path through the elemental damage and go down here through Blood Siphon and Coordination, then head down to Charisma. And then after you get that, I would head over to Multi-Shot and get Attack Mastery, and then with the Attack Mastery, you'll get Strikes an additional nearby enemy, and that's going to help you, it'll allow you to drop Ancestral Call from that point on. So that is going to be important. And then after that, I go down to Thrill of Battle, which helps with mana issues, and then I get more mana reservation efficiency from the mana mastery, and that'll help as well. And then you can continue to level up Clarity and Precision. Eventually you'll replace those. In this tree, you can also replace either probably Herald of Thunder, especially considering I'm not running Trinity at low levels anymore. But yeah, you can replace Herald of Thunder as well with Summon Skitterbots to get guaranteed shocks instead of having to rely on infrequent shocks from very low crit. That can be very helpful, so just keep that in mind. And this is kind of what the skill tree looks like. Early on, you'll start with Frost Blades, and of course, early on, you'll also have Ancestral Call if you do happen to go get that, and then added cold damage. If you do not have Ancestral Call, you could just put added lightning in as well, and that's fine. Just do a little bit more damage or momentum to help with some attack speed or faster attacks. Whatever you want to do here. There's a lot of flexibility. Picking up Blood Rage is pretty nice because it gives some attack speed, and probably more importantly, it gives you frenzy charges, which you can generate on a lot of the first bosses. So when you get this in towards the beginning of Act 2, a lot of the bosses after that have a lot of extra mobs to kill in the arena. The Vault Oversoul will, when it goes underground, it will summon mobs, and the Web Weaver, very importantly, has a bunch of extra spiders that it has. So the frenzy charges will give you a ton of extra damage. You might have to mash on your health potion a lot during this though, because you'll drain health over time. And you're not really going to have a lot of physical damage reduction, or any really, to mitigate that, especially for damage over time. Frost Blink, and if you're running two-handed swords, if you happen to get, or if you can buy, what I might do is message a friend if I see a friend is playing a class that gets Leap Slam, or I might just buy one off the trade site. But Leap Slam with faster attacks momentum, and that's pretty much all you need for this setup. And I have noted in here, we are going to ignore the Settlers quests, like all the minerals and stuff, for the early portion of the game. They're too slow. They're going to slow you down a lot. They're not going to give you a lot of benefit. And getting into building your town this early, since you're not getting a lot of gold yet, and the minerals won't be worth nearly as much, not necessarily worth it. You can do it if you want, but it will add a ton of time to your leveling. So for basically up until the first Ascendancy and until we get Multi-Strike in Act 4, I'm not even going to consider doing any of the Settlers quests. And then here's the portion of looking for Leap Slam as well. And then I have a little note for newer players. Mervale, you make 2 Sapphire Rings. At the end of Act 1, there might be some newer players from Path of Exile 2 that are trying to get into this. What you do is you get an Iron Ring, which you can get for, they drop on the ground like crazy, but you can also get them for 3 Wisdom Scrolls at the vendor, one of the vendors in town. And then you get an Int Gem, which you can buy just one of the low level ones for 1 Wisdom Scroll, and you sell the Iron Ring and the Int Gem, and you get a Sapphire Ring, which will give you cold resistance. If you have 2 Sapphire Rings, Mervale is going to not do a lot of damage to you, and it will be a very easy kill. Then as we kind of get to level, I believe 22 for Heat Shiver and 20 for Tessalio's Sign, I'm definitely going to be checking once I get to Act 2 for anybody who got like a lucky Heat Shiver drop, and if I happen to get an early Chaos or 2, I might try to see if I can buy up a Heat Shiver, depending, but I'll kind of put a trade search out for that. And Tessalio's Sign gives a ton of flat damage and also gives freeze chance early on, which synergizes well with Heat Shiver, and it's fairly common, so people will drop these sometime. So I'll be on the lookout for Tessalio's Sign as well, and I'll basically be looking for a Heat Shiver constantly all the way through my leveling process until I get one on the trade site. And then we're going to help Alira in Act 2 so we can get resistances. And another thing to note is starting at monster level 18, tinctures start to drop, and we're looking for either a Prismatic or a Rosethorn tincture. Rosethorn is just going to give a lot of crit chance, which will give us, more freezes and shocks potentially. Prismatic is what you really want though. Rosethorn is kind of the backup. There's a third kind of tincture that drops as well. I forget which one it is, but it isn't as good. If you can get a Prismatic, that is great, as early as possible. It's just a button you press for a ton of free damage. Okay, now let's go into Blade Trap. Blade Trap's a little different. For that, you don't need to get multi-shot, and thus you don't need the additional strikes. You can just get this later, once you actually get a few more levels. And this is to the end of Act 2 or so, this tree is, so you'll be around level 26, not level 40, obviously. Probably around level mid-20s somewhere, anywhere from like 23 to like 27, more than likely. depending on how you level. And so you're going to have something a little bit like this. I think Forces of Nature with the Elemental Mastery that gives a 25% chance to treat enemy monster elemental resistance as inverted is very good. As you can see, we for this one have it configured to standard boss of roughly your own level, and it's 12.2% damage. So very significant amount of damage, very noticeable. And the DPS number here is just one trap. You're going to be throwing tons of traps. So Blade Trap, this one's just going to be added cold damage and swift assembly. You can just put Frost Blades in a weapon swap, just throw, anything with a green socket in your offhand and throw Frost Blades in there to level so that you can switch back to it later. For now though, you're going to run Blade Trap. You can also have it in one of your main links and kind of just use it as extra, killing smaller things like the monkeys at the very beginning of Act 2. But it's a lot easier to just get everything to chase you and throw blade traps roughly under you, and a bunch of stuff dies, and you don't really need to worry about stopping moving with Blade Trap. So with this, you're definitely getting Summon Skitterbots, because you'll also get the additional 10% more trap and mine damage. So it's going to be Herald Vice, Summon Skitterbots, and also Precision and Clarity as well. Since we're running a Claw with this, you're going to do Whirling Blades, faster attacks, and momentum. You can also run, I believe, a Dagger with this, Dagger, Claw, or One-Handed Sword. And I believe those can all also be used with Whirling Blades. So since we don't have any Claw-specific nodes, if you get a really good One-Handed Sword or Dagger, feel free to use that as well. Pretty much up until you start getting Claw-specific nodes. Claws, the benefit of Claws is life gain on hit, which Blade Trap isn't really going to benefit from anyway, since it's a trap. And then, of course, Frost Blink as well. And that's our setup. Very simple setup. I just put kind of whatever gear, like you want life and resistances just generally, possibly from your actual gloves, stuff like flat damage or attack speed can be good. So I kind of just put things in here that are going to be necessary. Lapis Amulet will help you meet intelligence requirements, so that's the preferred amulet early on, and Heavy Belt will help you meet any strength requirements, so that's going to be your preferred belt. But whatever you get that's good is going to work. If you ever need stats temporarily, you can just temporarily spec into either Prowess or Thief's Craft, and especially early on, those will carry you quite a ways. So important thing here, I didn't really worry about the flasks too much in these early leveling trees. Quicksilver is important. 2 Quicksilvers even better. So keep that in mind. And then now we get to the first Ascendancy. And going through the notes, things can change here a little bit. You're going to want to start working on Kalgur. You can clear minerals a lot more quickly, and you can get gold faster, so you start unlocking things. And for this, I have the first level. I actually had to edit the Surfcaster, so it only had Ghost of the Deep for the first Ascendancy, which will give us a bunch of damage, attack speed, and movement speed. So really, really powerful. And I did put a tincture in here. Obviously, it's just going to be a huge burst of damage. It gives almost 5,000 damage, so that's like a 40-ish, or actually I can just see it's a 38.1% damage boost, even for, a not crazy tincture. So nice stuff there, although it did default to quality, which I should edit out because you're probably not going to have quality here, so it's going to be a little less damage than that. Go ahead and save that up here. All right. So, and then I have optional. You can start doing shipments if you want. Since you're building up minerals, you want to use your minerals to unlock things first, but once you start getting extra ones as you progress through the campaign, you can start sending out shipments, and you can send minimum shipments with 1 low-level shipper in order to save gold, so it's not eating up a ton of your gold. The things that might be worthwhile here are sending Petrified Amber to Ribbonfell for rings, or Pondium for amulets, Orichalcum to Pondium or Teanui for claws, potentially. Both of those can give claws. I think Ribbonfell can give anything as well, but you kind of want to focus a little bit more. and claws are dex and int based. You can send Crimson Iron to Teanui for dex-based armors, since a lot of your skill gems you're going to be using are going to be either dex or dex strength hybrid. You'll need some blue links as well here and there, but you can kind of sort that out. You can run like one int dex hybrid armor piece, for instance, to get your blue links for like your Frost Blink and Bone Chill, which you get later on. That kind of thing. So important stuff there. Important to note, you don't want to be coming back to Kalgur all the time, maybe just a couple of times during the campaign as to not waste too much time. But you want to start getting your town built up and running by the time you get to maps. I'd say don't visit it more than once per act, really, if you don't have to, if you're not stuck. Once you have your first Ascendancy and multi-strike, especially when you get Heat Shiver as well, the campaign should be a cakewalk from there on out. You just run through it as fast as you can manage. In Act 6, you can buy any gems you're missing just by doing the first little quest where you go and clear out that area for what's her name? I forget her name. I don't remember a lot of names very easily, but yeah, there's a quest at the very beginning of Act 6 that allows you to have access to all the gems, and you can just buy them with currency. So, for instance, if you don't have your Mark on Hit set up or Bone Chill yet, you can get that taken care of. You can also start going into crit at this point and then grab Nightblade, which will speed you up even more. You get a ton of speed already from Surfcaster. You'll try to get speed on your boots, of course, and then you'll get even more speed for it once you get Nightblade. And when you get Nightblade, you can just replace elemental damage with attacks, for instance. So if we take a look at this, what do we got? It's 12.04, and I don't have crit chance built in yet, but you go Nightblade, and you just configure here to elusive, and elusive on average is going to give us 15% movement speed, so pretty nice. It'll give less damage, or less DPS than elemental damage with attacks. But yeah, I don't have any crit currently at this point. But once you start getting crit from this point and beyond, that can be the case. All right, and I kind of jump forward here because honestly, all you do is clear a campaign, you get your skill points, you get more ascendancies, and then you're moving on to early endgame. And this is kind of when you're filled out. If you don't have spell suppression yet, you want to, first of all, you want to get Inveterate. And then if you don't have your spell suppression fully filled out, you get spell suppression is lucky. You can get increased suppressed spell damage once you get that all filled out. I'm just going to leave this as is. This is right around level 70 or so. The gear I have isn't going to be really emblematic of level 70. It's going to be a little better than what you're going to have early endgame type thing. Southbound is really nice to get early on in endgame, or even while you're still in the campaign, because it will give you extra freeze duration, making things easier to freeze. You want to start doing that once you get a decent amount of crit chance, because you'll freeze more reliably. And it gives a ton of flat damage, just an absolutely crazy amount of flat damage, which is the main reason. And by the time you finish campaign, you'll have all your ascendancies, or at least 3 of them. You might not have sea legs. Well, you probably won't have sea legs yet. You'll have to actually get that done. In fact, for this, I should fix that. So Surfcaster, go here and edit, and we'll go ahead and edit out. So we're looking for Stormy Seas. We're looking for Glacial Wave. We're looking for Ghost of the Deep. And we'll just go ahead and edit out this last one because, yeah, we're not going to have that just yet. Might have to fix some things here. We'll go ahead and add this. We'll switch this. Yeah, so still have some things here. And then from that point, you want to make sure that you get some things. So I'm just going to go onto my amethyst ring here. And I'll just add some lightning resist. Yeah, you want to get your resistances capped. And then I'll go on to this belt that I have, and I'll throw on some cold resist. You also want to start getting some chaos resist as well. You might need to use amethyst rings for that, which is absolutely fine. But yeah, you want to make sure you get your resists up, get everything going that way. As far as for getting into maps, they say that idols have about a 50% chance from dropping for bosses, so you're going to want to start getting your idols, and you're going to want to kind of group them into different mechanics that you want to farm, and you're going to want to just throw all of them in when you first start, because they're going to give you increased map drop chances and implicit now. So just throw every idol you get in when you first start progressing. Don't even think about it. It doesn't matter what they give as far as mechanics. You just want to get all of your slots filled up. And then you also want to start filling out your Kalgur, your town. The first mechanics that we're going to be looking to focus on are going to be Betrayal to unlock bench crafts, Legion to get Lethal Pride, which will help with strength requirements and give us a bunch of extra damage. There's like crit multi, melee damage, double damage chance, all sorts of good stuff there. Crit chance. Abyss. This is one we're going to focus on for a while, especially getting to endgame early on. So for Abyss, we're going to be looking for Abyss Jewels, which we can use and or sell. Darkness Enthroned, want to look for a high one there, as close to 100% as you can get. They go from 50 to 100%. Darkness Enthroned can be very powerful. I do not have it in the current endgame setup, but the final endgame setup is going to have a 100% Darkness Enthroned with 2 very powerful Murderous Eye Jewels in it. That's pretty much what you want in endgame once you have everything else figured out. Of course, Mage Blood and that kind of thing too if you want, but if you don't have currency for that, Darkness Enthroned is going to be your best bang for your buck as far as DPS for sure, and can help with a bunch of other things as well, like ailments. Bubonic Trail, you're going to want a 2 Abyss Socket Bubonic Trail, so that you can get Tekrod's Gaze and get that set up to start getting a bunch of extra crit chance. Tekrod's Gaze is only available at item level 80 plus, and of course you'll want to look at Stygian Vices, because Stygian Vice is going to be pretty much the best belt base for a lot of builds for most of the first few days of the league. So getting a lot of Stygian Vices and selling any decent ones is usually going to be a pretty good strategy. So in Kalgur, after you've used your Vericium to upgrade everything you need it for, start sending it to Ribbonfell for Scarabs to sell and use for farming strats. You want to save crops for roughly 5 million shipments. 3 to 5 million seems to be kind of the most bang for your buck. And you want to start dusting rares you get back from shipments. You're not going to get a ton of dust. It's not going to contribute a lot. But, ideally you get enough to where you can send 2.5 million worth of crops and 2.5 million worth of dust. That's really going to be hard to do in the beginning. And, you're just going to basically want to send your crops out once you get around 5 million. Send extra shipments to previously mentioned areas to gear up more and get more dust or sell good rares to sell. And when I say that, what I mean is these up here. You're still going to want Petrified Amber to Ribbonfell for rings or Pondium for amulets. You can also send them to some place for belts as well. That would be... I don't recall off the top of my head. It's going to be Nakanu. Yeah, you can send them to Nakanu for belts as well. But I think belts are, not super high priority, especially since we'll be farming for Stygian Vices. Then, same thing. You're going to want to look for good claws, so Orichalcum to Pondium or Teanui. And then Crimson Iron to Teanui as well. But you can, and you also want to really focus on the... Ooh, that's weird. All right. Some error message came up there. Especially focus on sending Crimson Iron to get 5 or 6 links early on. You can get a decent amount through shipment pretty easily. And sending anywhere but Pondium or Kalgur, because Pondium is going to be int bases. Kalgur is going to give you ward bases, I believe, mostly. So preference to Teanui for just general dex bases. With Dex and Strength Hybrid body armor, it's going to be the easiest to color for your links in the endgame, since we have a combination of red and green. But pure evasion can work fine as well. The upside to hybrid body armor is that it is going to give you the option to potentially roll percent physical damage reduction, which is going to be really nice. So since we don't have a lot of physical reduction otherwise, so that's one of the benefits for that. And also just it'll make it so like random small hits will do basically nothing. Although once you have enough evasion and block, that's not going to be too much of an issue. You might notice too that I've focused a little bit more on block in this build than previously, and that's because there are less defensive mechanics available for Surfcaster, with the only notable one being changing seasons. And for the effective health pool can be multiplied whenever you can hit a target by 15% or 15% more basically in all of the skill trees from here on out. Just because it doesn't calculate that in POB right now. So the enemies chilled by your hits lessen their damage dealt by half of chill effect isn't yet calculated, isn't taken into account currently. So then we're going to want to just progress and kill Eater and Exarch as soon as possible to get altar farming up, get bubblegum currency going, get scarabs, all that kind of stuff, get a lot of chaos to trade for things. And then we're going to figure out endgame currency generation to finish gearing for tier 17s and Ubers. This will depend on what idols are available. Don't really know how this is going to go, but my default currency is going to be my favorite strategy for Settlers of Kalgur, which is ghost busting toxic sewers. I made a video way back on that. You'll get Torment Scarab of Peculiarity and other Torment Scarabs and idols. And basically what you do is you chase one of the Scarab types, makes it so enemies they touch are very likely to drop Scarabs, and you kill those enemies. Toxic sewers is a bunch of kind of tunnely areas, so they go over all of the enemies, they touch everything. You just chase them around the sewers, kill them, get tons and tons of Scarabs, keep the ones you're going to use, sell the valuable ones you're not going to use, and it's pretty good currency, and it's great for setting up other currency strategies. So really, really nice little thing. That's what I'm going to default to. Other than that, I'm not really sure what I'm going to do for a currency strategy for gearing up, but it'll just depend on what kind of idols, like what kind of stats are available on idols and what I can come up with. And finally, the last bit, just have the end game layout. This is when you start getting cluster jewels. You'll notice that this setup once again is more focused on block. So I have 59% block chance, 43% spell block chance. I'm going to have very high evasion, evade chance 90%. As it's making use of Watcher's Eye with chance to evade attack hits when affected by Grace. I have crit multi while affected by Precision, and Fizz's Extra Lightning while affected by Wrath. And I'm actually using a Fizz Claw for the end game, which is a little bit of a different setup, and there's a very good reason for that. I still want to use Trinity. Trinity is the best. So let's just say we're level, it'd be 96 here. It'll show like it's 98, but that's not taking into account these 2 extra points, which wouldn't necessarily be allocated until we do get level 98, in which case we can allocate those points and get just a good jewel in here. But in this case, it's going to be necessary to have the Surfcaster jewel in, just because that's how everything functions. But yeah, important thing here, medium cluster jewels with Astonishing Affliction, you'll want 2. I also got Blast Freeze, which can be pretty nice, and then Storm Rider for the other one, just a lot of damage, and power charge stuff, lots of power charge generation. Other important thing, Lethal Pride for endgame. You'll want stuff like, double damage. If you can get at least a couple of double damage ones, you'll get huge, colossal size freezes. You can get crit multi, melee damage, all sorts of good stuff, depending. So yeah, that's basically the setup. At some point, you'll want to grab from the shadows, which gives elusive effect. Even though this is a dagger node, the elusive effect plus the dagger mastery that gives 40% to crit strike multi. This mastery alone, even with all of my late game stuff, is 7.2%. So DPS is 21.7 some odd million. If I get rid of this, it's 19.23. So this is a significant amount. This one here is 5.1, which is pretty much more than anything. So even going here, even though this is only 1.7 per point for the 3 points, and then you get this, which is another 7.7%. So that's basically 12 point some odd percent for 4 points, which is more efficient than anything else you're going to get in a late game. So it's very important to get this set up, even though it doesn't look like something you should. And I've explained that in previous builds for Frostblades when you're running Nightblade. So that's kind of the lookout. You get, frenzy charges, so you get power charges, you get cluster jewels. I'm going with prodigious defense here, and calamitous, which gives more effective non-damaging ailments. Also critical mastery for giving effective non-damaging ailments you inflict with critical strikes, which in the end game is going to be, every attack is going to be a critical strike with like Tekkarad's Gaze and stuff. So you get 50% and then 10% or 15% here. So that's 65%, and then another 40%. So you get 105%. And since you now shock with cold damage and all your lightning damage is transitioned to cold damage, you're going to get crazy shocks. Astonishing Affliction also gives duration to elemental ailments, which will give us freeze duration, which will be tremendous. If you're using a physical claw, Winter Spirit's very good. Cold Mastery will convert the rest of your physical to cold, especially important when you're going a physical claw. So those two things are very good. And other than that, in the late game, the Reservation Mastery is less useful. Like, for instance, the Auras from Skills doesn't give a lot. You get 2.1%, which is okay from Reservation Mastery, but it's not great. So I pretty much got rid of that. Like, even just a small attack damage while holding a shield with 3% attack speed node on here is pretty much the same as any mastery you can get with this. If you reserve a little bit of life, like let's say you put level 1 precision on life or something, you could get the 1% to all elemental masteries or all elemental resistances if you want. But I think the EHP wouldn't change that much because of the life you would lose. So it doesn't necessarily seem realistic. But yeah, 6th link, Frostblades added Cold, Multi-Strike Trinity, Nightblade, elemental damage with attacks. If you really want to boost everything up, you just replace all of the regular ones with the awakened versions, like Awakened added Cold, Awakened elemental damage with attacks, and then of course Awakened Multi-Strike, but Awakened Multi-Strike is always extremely expensive, and that'll give you a very significant boost in DPS. But yeah, that's not where we're going at the moment here. This is kind of getting on towards being able to farm up that kind of stuff. You can often afford like Awakened added Cold or Awakened elemental damage with attacks pretty early, but yeah. And then we have Wrath, Herald of Ash, Grace with Enlighten. So Herald of Ash is going to be part of what allows us with our Heat Shiver, along with some other factors, to get close to as much fire damage as cold, which will allow us to run Trinity, which is extremely important. So Trinity is pretty much like the highest DPS skill there is if you can get it to go, because it gives more damage and elemental resistance penetration. So it's just incredible. You can't beat Trinity. You should always run it in an elemental build if you can. So important stuff there. Oop, I lost some DPS somewhere. Oh well, unimportant. Doesn't matter. I'll figure it out later. So yeah, Grace, of course, more evasion, always good. Evasion and block are incredibly synergistic together. Wrath is giving a lot of DPS as well, 34% more, even with a pretty really good claw, 534% physical DPS claw with hits can't be evaded. So yeah, even with all of that, and a lot of flat damage from various murderous eye jewels and whatnot, even still, Wrath is very, very powerful. If you can get like an enchant, or if you can get a corrupted Heat Shiver, for instance, with +2 to auras skills, and you put your auras in that, you'll get even more value out of Grace and Wrath. And then of course we have that with Enlighten, Assassin's Mark, Mark on hit and life tap, Blood Rage with Automation. I think Automation is really good with Blood Rage because you can just kind of set it and forget it. And I'm actually, once you get Bubonic Trail, which will give you reservation efficiency while affected by a unique Abyss Jewel, which we're running Tekrad's Gaze. If you don't know, Tekrad's Gaze is almost basically giving you an extra power charge for each Murderous Eye Jewel you're running. So in this case, we'd be running 1, 2, 3, 4, and we could even run another one in the place of this Surfcaster, although, which would allow us to drop critical hit chance elsewhere. And that would allow us to get rid of Sea Legs, which you can then go into self-freeze. So I don't have the plans to set up self-freeze yet. For those who do not know, there's an Ascendancy. Oh, yeah, I can just hit cancel. There is the Ascendancy. Is it Brine Bound? No. It is Changing Seasons? No. Wait, yes. Yeah, okay. Changing Seasons. All damage taken from hits can chill you. The effective chill on you is reversed. Basically what this will do is when you get it set up, which there are ways to do, and I'll go over that when and if I get that set up, but it would give you 30% more action speed, basically, which is 30% more movement speed, 30% more attack speed, 30% more cast speed, all of which are very high. So this would be an incredible amount of damage, and getting that set up would be very good. And having the additional crit chance would allow us to get rid of Changing Seasons. We'd lose some evasion then, but that's fine. This is kind of overkill, more than we need. And we can swap some of our hybrid armor evasion gear at that point for just pure evasion to kind of make up the difference. Like I have pure evasion on like gloves and stuff, but actually there isn't too much I'd want to change. Important parts in gearing here. Of course, you'll always want chance to block. I like spell block as well. Physical damage reduction on your shield and chest are nice. And one little thing you can do is you can get a hybrid conquest lamellar like this. You want to get melee hits, have a chance to fortify, and additional physical damage reduction, and then just as high as you can get for armor evasion is the way to go with no life. Because if you don't have any life on your body armor, you simply put increased maximum life if there's no life modifiers on your equipped body armor. 15% increased life is a very significant amount of EHP. In this case, very, very significant. So that's something you can do. And yeah, that's pretty much the whole setup. Keep in mind, all of this will be about 15% more because of one of our ascendancies. So we'll actually have like almost a 1200 fizz or 12,000 fizz max hit, which is good enough to survive most physical hits in the game without, certain modifiers. And this can always be pushed quite a bit further because this isn't with min-max gear. It's kind of working my way up to that. So hope you enjoyed. I know this was a long video, but I wanted to go in depth. Yeah, let me know how it goes. Keep in mind, you can always switch to Lightning Strike. All you need to do is basically get piercing shots. So you just drop some points somewhere, wherever, for piercing shots so that you get, the pierces for your Lightning Strike. And you're pretty much set. You can do it more or less the exact same way now that you can turn all your lightning damage to cold damage. And really, it requires no changes other than that. And probably will be more powerful, but I'm still going to play Frostblades anyway because that is my favorite. Hope you enjoyed. This has been Ryan from Behind Eyes Gaming, and I'll see you next time. Bye.